Welcome, everybody. Very exciting to have you again here for FabLearn 2020, the third day of our totally new, totally virtual conference. We have a very exciting schedule for you today, and so I'm glad you're all able to make it with us on this Sunday. First of all, we are going to go through the schedule, go through some sort of housekeeping things, and then we have lots of exciting awards to give out today. So lots to do here in 10 minutes. We want to start, though, by thanking Jonathan Peng, who has made this conference possible. Many of you have sent us messages saying that, like, wow, this is really going really well. Congratulations. It's going well because Jonathan has done so much work to make it go well. And I think, you know, Paulo and Leah and I, we just kind of do what Jonathan tells us to do, and we get to talk and all that stuff. But Jonathan's making sure that the links are running, making sure you're all getting registered, making sure speakers are able to present their great work. And so thank you, Jonathan, very much for all your hard work to make this as smooth as it has been. I've been completely blown away by the fact that it's going well. So thank you. And also thank you to our volunteers who have been coming to each of the different sessions and helping keep time and all that stuff. It's been so helpful. We really appreciate it. A couple FabLearn conferences to announce. First of all, there's going to be a conference, FabLearn Italy, coming up in a little over a month. And there will be a link to this soon, as well as FabLearn Israel. Check these conferences out. They may be, they'll be virtual, and so they may be great opportunities for you to continue the conversations that you started this weekend and to find out new research that's happening in different parts of the world. We also are planning FabLearn 2021-ish. I chose a somewhat apocalyptic looking picture because that's how I feel right now. But we really do want to have this conference again, and we're hoping to have it next fall. Stay tuned, and we'll let you know the specific dates as soon as we're able to figure those out ourselves. But we're definitely going to have another FabLearn, and hopefully we'll be able to have it together. And hopefully the skies will actually be clear and beautiful and sunny, and everyone will be happy and hugging each other safely. That's our hope. Quick note about the schedule today. We're going to have 2 amazing keynotes coming up, and those will be in this link for this webinar. We also have an incredible panel on making and hip hop that will happen at 1:20. There will be a different link for that. You can find that link, of course, at the FabLearn 2020 conference canvas. We also have full papers and educator panels. Those have been fantastic the past couple of days. Those are happening again. They are in parallel, so choose which one you can go to. And you can, of course, join one for a little while and then switch over to the other one. It's all virtual, so it's very easy to do that now. After that panel, though, after those full paper and educator panels, though, please do join us for a conclusion. You can find the link, of course, on the canvas. We'll bring everyone together to have some final thoughts, to talk a little bit about kind of next steps, and there will be important information shared then, as well as kind of a kickoff for our final session, the Young Maker poster session. This is, of course, one of the highlights of the conference. You guys got to see the Young Maker panel the other day. There's another huge group of really exciting, really brilliant scholars, young scholars that are out there making and doing cool things and important things in the world. So please make sure you're here for that at 3:30 to 4:30 and to see that great work. Paulo?
So, every year we have this Lifetime Achievement Award for FabLearn, and we try to choose people that, represent like one of the pillars of maker education, of constructionist education. And this year, or for next year, we picked Nathan, Sherry Turkle. So Sherry Turkle, you might know her. She's a MIT professor who was there at the very beginning of constructionism and has done a lot of groundbreaking, fascinating work on the relationships between humans and machines. And especially about our community. I just want to mention in the next slide, Nathan, her foundational work on epistemological pluralism and bricolage. And so, these are just some quotes from this groundbreaking foundational paper called Epistemological Pluralism. I can never say that word, that she wrote with Seymour Papert. And the idea of this paper that you should all read is that the kind of traditional ways that we organize work in the sciences or in engineering it's just one of the ways that Sherry identified as ways that children work. So she advocated for bricolage as a way to organize work, not a stage in a progression to a superior form. And this whole paper talks about how we should respect different ways of being, of knowing, of doing things. And it was really foundational to everything that we do in this community. So hopefully we'll have her next year. And we're very, very excited to give this award to Sherry. And now we have a new award that Leah will talk about.
So I'm so delighted to announce the first winner of the Mike Eisenberg FabLearn Award for Beautiful Learning Technologies. This is an award given in honor of the late Mike Eisenberg, and I'm so delighted to announce that the award for this year is Ji Chi. So Ji is a project assistant professor at the University of Tokyo right now. Nathan, could you go ahead? So Ji, if you're not familiar with her work, she explores the intersection of traditional paper craft and technology. She's done just a range of incredibly beautiful artworks that kind of explore the creative possibilities of that medium. She's also done amazing work in kind of education and in helping other people get access to that medium. Among her groundbreaking work in that space is she's the founder of a company called Chibitronics that makes a line of circuit stickers that you could these are electronic stickers that you can peel and stick onto paper and other flexible materials to very quickly and elegantly make circuits on paper. Another thing that I want to mention about Ji, this is one of the most striking things about her work, I think, is today, kind of if you go into any makerspace or any science museum, one of the most popular activities that you'll see people doing is making circuits with copper tape and LEDs and stuff. And that all came from Ji. I think no one quite remembers that anymore, but like no one did that before Ji developed those approaches and those tools and published a whole bunch of gorgeous and detailed tutorials about how to work with those materials. So her work has had this really profound impact on both the world of art and design and also the world of learning. So I'm just wanted to share a couple of slides of her beautiful, beautiful work. I encourage you to check it out on your own and watch some of the videos and other materials that you can find online. These are all kind of just gorgeous, interactive paper electronic pieces. And there's one more slide. Here you see some newer work and a snapshot of some little electronic sketches made with different materials and Chibitronic stickers. So I can't think of anyone more deserving of this award than Ji. It's such a pleasure, Ji, to be able to honor your work and Mike's legacy in this way. I want to say one more thing, which is that Mike adored Ji's work and he was so incredibly proud to have you, Ji, as like a grand student. And so it's so fitting in that way as well. Thank you.
I guess, I don't know, I just wanted to say thanks, big heart, and especially to you, Leah, for getting me started on this. So I'm so grateful. Thank you all.
Yay. There's a thunderous applause. I can hear it.
Yeah, there are lots of comments on the chat. Everybody's super excited, and so now we'll quickly announce, the best paper or the best paper awards, and also Ji will be with us next year, doing her talk as the Mike Eisenberg. So you hear more about her, but so let me just announce the paper awards. We would love to have people here and clapping and everything, but unfortunately we live in difficult times. So Best full paper award goes to Intergeneration Making with Young Children by Melissa Perez, Stephanie Jones, Sarah Lee, and Marcelo Wortley. It's a group mostly from slower. Go back. University of Michigan and Northwestern University. The best short paper award goes to Designing an Educational Internet of Things Toolbox, a case study of a learner-centric tool design by Atapan Chanin and Arnand Sipitakiat from Chiang Mai University in Thailand. Then the best educator paper awards, we have three. First one is Technology Learning Groups in the Bedouin Sector by Dvir Varshavsky from the Science Center of Yeruham in Israel. Second best educator paper award, FabLearn Dialogues as a pilot for transnational maker educational exchange by Martin Hennekes, Peter Troxler, and Hanne Andersen from Han University and Rotterdam University in the Netherlands, and from the FabLearn.dk organization in Denmark. And the last one is the AstroN project, a STEM through experimental activities with low-cost materials and the involvement of girls in science by Cláudia de Oliveira Lozada, Cláudia Celeste Celestino, Wesley Góes e Gabriel Ramos, da Universidade Federal de Alagoas e Universidade Federal do ABC in Brazil. And finally, last category, Best Demo Paper Award, Modern Frankensteins, Teaching Introductory AI and Robotics Through Narrative Making Activities by Ruth Wiley and Tyler Eglin from the Arizona State University Center for Science and the Imagination in the US. And finally, Augmented Reality Holoboard and Holopen, Electronic Circuit Debugging Tools by Julian Hadou, Carolyn Vanderlee, and Burton Schneider from Harvard University and Tufts University in the US. And just one last note before we move on, all of those awards we picked the top ranked paper in every category. So it was based on the reviews and averaging all the reviews, and we just picked the top in each category. So it was a very mathematical criteria to pick, and they were all amazing papers. You should check them out in the recordings as well. So congrats to all the awardees. And now we go to introducing the keynotes.
So I'm really delighted to be able to introduce our keynotes for today. So first we have Laura Devendorf, who's an assistant professor at the Atlas Institute at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Laura is an artist and a technologist. She makes beautiful, provocative, kind of fascinating technologies and artworks that explore kind of the human relationship between kind of machines, materials, and culture. I'll let you read her more formal bio online, but she's really wonderful. We're gonna go ahead and introduce the second keynote as well right now. They'll kind of go one after the other. So our second keynote of this morning is Lining Yao. She's an assistant professor of HCI, Human-Computer Interaction at Carnegie Mellon. She directs the Morphing Matter Lab. And Lining is doing just fascinating work around fabrication and robotics, and particular work around, as you'll see, kind of soft materials, and just her work is fascinating and really groundbreaking. So we have just two amazing people to talk about their beautiful work here today. So, so Laura, I'll let you take it away. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. That was such a lovely introduction, and I'm so honored to be here today. And I don't know, FabLearn has a very close place in my heart. First, before I start talking, slides good, things good? Okay, and if I look over in the distance, it's because I'm doing a multiple screen thing. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was really honored to be invited to give this talk, and Excited that it was still going to happen even after sort of the unthinkable happened in the world. And yeah, FabLearn's been really influential in my own work, and during my PhD, I really enjoyed the times I was able to participate in the conference. Today, my talk is called Designing Not Knowing. I play this video at the beginning, which is work by a PhD student working with me, Chanel Wu, because I think it kind of sets up a bit of the feeling of the talk. So what I'm going to talk about quite a bit today is the agency of things that aren't humans and the way that materials imprint upon us. So not necessarily how we work with them, but how they train us to work with them. So I will invite you, if you have any yarn, which I seem to have a lot of nearby, or a pencil, this is a good talk for fidgeting through, and maybe you'll find something interesting as you fidget and talk or and listen. Okay, so most of the work I am going to talk about today was completed at the Unstable Design Lab, which is a physical space and a group of people hosted in the Atlas Institute at CU Boulder. This is a group of people that come in and out. Some are students at CU, some aren't. Actually, Lenning's student, Leah Alba, was visiting the summer we took this picture. And what we're doing there is really thinking about the relationships of technology and society, and also trying to create a space to see what other forms of research are possible. Just sort of an obligatory plug. We're hiring PhD students, and Atlas is also looking for new professors through a call through the College of Engineering. So if this is interesting to you, go ahead and check those out. Okay, so this is sort of the meat of my talk here. And I'm starting by wanting to talk about this artwork by an artist named Anne Hamilton. And this is a piece called Tower, and she had this commissioned, and it's a full tower that you can walk in, and it consists of 2 concentric staircases. And there's a pond in the bottom and an opening in the top. And so the experience of being in this space is that you're walking in this spiral with people maybe walking the same or other directions, and you lose your sense of up or down. And this artwork is the foundation for a really beautiful essay she wrote called Making Not Knowing. And it describes the space as well as a creative practice as the search for becoming a beginner or learning how to not know. And I think that's really embodied in this project, in the sense that when you're in this space, you're not confused or struggling so much as you're so disoriented that your perception becomes open to different kinds of possibilities. So what she writes about not knowing is that it's actually an active practice, that in order to not know in a constructive way, you actually have to work at it. And though it involves a lot of waiting and finding, and that they may happen by accident, they aren't accidents. You need to train to be good at not knowing. And that it also requires a permissive and rigorous willingness to trust. And so a willingness to follow something, even though you don't necessarily know where it's going to go. And finally, she closes by saying that this is an everyday practice. This is a practice that you don't just do in a classroom or a studio. It's sort of embedded in the everyday that you have around you. So when I'm looking around, I see stuffed animals tucked into a bed. And during the pandemic, my house is my office. So this sort of blurring of the everyday and the workday and practice is really maybe more evident now than it has been in the past. So what I think is so interesting about this idea of not knowing, particularly around design and the design of technologies for making and for learning, is the idea that it kind of opens up another space of dealing with issues. And the issues we're dealing with as designers are quite substantial or particularly urgent in this particular moment, whether we're talking about climate change or the Black Lives Matter movement or some of the wildfires that are happening. More and more, we're hearing that we're living in a moment where design matters. where the very relationships we have with technology shape not just ourselves and what we're able to achieve, but shape an entire world, both the ecological systems and the social systems that we're interconnected with. And in any kind of design space, there's some kind of boundary between the questions we're allowed to ask or the stories we can imagine of design, um, and the kind of rules of design or what we think we're doing when we're doing design. And I'm just going to sort of say, for the sake of provocation, is that most of our design, particularly around technology and making, has really been characterized by the rhetorics of knowing. That we're often, when we're designing, trying to help people become experts, become fluent, be able to control a situation and get a predictable outcome, to produce more and to achieve specific goals. And we talk about this as a pathway to participation, equity, and empowerment. And so if we see not knowing as a negation, we see it maybe as being not expert or not in control. And so we might see that as a bad thing. But what I'd like to suggest is that Anne Hamilton's construction of making as not knowing shows that not knowing isn't the negation of knowing so much as it is the complement to it. And that while we may need moments where we do kind of show a fluency, we need to balance that at times with the ability to see things new, with the ability to cultivate an attention to the world around us, with the ability to surrender to things that are beyond our control, to honor our struggles, and to reflect on why we're achieving the things we feel like we need to achieve. And I would like to argue in this talk that this can also be a pathway to participation, equity, and empowerment. And the hope is that this sort of mildly kind of expands our design imagination, shows us some new questions and approaches that we could try that might be worth trying, given that there's a lot to lose. All right, so I'm going to kind of go back in time a bit and talk about how I came to sort of appreciate not knowing. And this really happened during my PhD, where on one hand, I was doing a lot of computational design making tools like Tangles, which I showed at FabLearn 2012. And at the same time, I had a child. And this experience of having a child was really disruptive to my sense of control, right? I had this person who depended on me, and every decision seemed to have such gravity and weight, and I had no idea what to do. And I found myself turning to things like code and making as a way to kind of have some control over the world. And just these things happening at once really shaped how I became how I sort of began to see technologies as related to having us feel a sense of control or learn to be kind of out of control. And this I explored specifically by trying to redesign a 3D printer. So where I saw kind of MakerBot style 3D printers of the time, defined by this idea of knowing, of being able to imagine something and to get it out of the printer, I was maybe more interested in the ability of a human to be a 3D printer, where instead of knowing, we're discovering and working by hand with the materials. So I sort of reimagined the 3D printer as a human with a glue gun who would be guided by a little laser guide that would draw the 3D printer paths. And I'm not going to go in too much detail about it, but I have a lot written about this in my dissertation. But I'm going to highlight some of the key moments throughout that project that have really stuck with me into how I think today. And one is that I would test it with artists. And there was this one artist who was a ceramicist who used it and really tried to do something ambitious and it didn't work. And then just tried to do something simple. And he talked about how he's fine with struggling. And he actually considered himself to be a good struggler. And I thought that was such an interesting thing to say, that you've actually gotten a good practice of being good at struggling. And this kind of came to an embodied sense when I took this sort of human 3D printing system and I displayed it at a conference called TEI, and I was going to try to make the Stanford bunny out of balloons. And this took an extraordinary amount of time. It was like 8 hours. And towards the end of a day, a very, very light breeze came and knocked the whole thing over. And so in one sense, I sort of initially considered it a failure. And a lot of colleagues were coming up to me and sort of trying to offer me ways I could save face, because the idea that we would have a technology that let you fail seems to be a sign that you're just not a very good designer. But instead, I started to think about my own relationship in that moment. And that was a really arrogant making project. Why should I think I can make this big bunny out of balloons? The balloons did not want to be in the shape of a bunny. I didn't understand the materials. And from this experience, I ended up cultivating a sense of humility. And I started to think about, well, what would it mean to design systems where humility was the outcome instead of necessarily this kind of focus on achievement and doing something in this kind of narrow way. So I got excited about this idea of materials being able to shape the objects we were making with 3D printing, or having the environment shape it in some ways. So I made this portable system, but actually it really didn't let the system or the environment shape the materials in much way, because it was sort of cordoned off from the environment and the things that were happening. And so I reimagined it as a loom that might choose its pattern based on the wind. And when I first got to CU, I made this loom, and this is called the wind loom. And each one of these heddles, they're called in weaving, so they're holding the vertical yarns up. They push the yarns out when the wind blows. And the different speeds of the wind cause different parts of the pattern to move. So the idea is that you could collaborate with the wind, and the wind would set the pattern and you would work back and forth with it. But this turned out to be very not user-friendly. And this is just a video that shows kind of on a rather windy day, how feeble the system sort of just kind of shook helplessly every time the wind blew. And my husband took this photo of me in the backyard where I'm actually just waiting for something to happen. So I originally, again, kind of walked away from this going, God, I invested all these resources and what a failure this project was. It doesn't work. It doesn't make interesting results. But what happened is I actually learned quite a lot about the wind, that the wind does not travel in straight lines as though my kind of vision had suggested. And the places where the wind kind of is more forceful or less forceful, and it really kind of attuned my sense of everyday life around where the wind was and wasn't and how I might capture it. So while I didn't make very good weavings from this, it did actually have an interesting quality of helping me notice my everyday environment. So this kind of leads me to ask, what does it mean to work? So under these logics of knowing, we might think working is something we commonly hear of as user-friendly, or that it supports the user in the locus of control, and it minimizes distractions, and it helps you get to your goal. And I think these are all good and fine, but there's also this other logic that can exist, which is the logic of not knowing, that maybe working means you're presented with sort of a productive frustration, that you're put in a position to negotiate, to understand something beyond yourself and to work with it rather than imposing upon it. And that maybe technologies for not knowing are those that actually make time and space for noticing. So sometimes I would call the wind loom a machine for waiting. And maybe it didn't serve my creative goals, but if you think of it more holistically as a network of agencies, maybe the wind was more satisfied than I was. I learned about it. And so in terms of this being all kind of in the vein of a provocation and maybe just wanting to argue for another way of seeing, I always really love the work of Donna Haraway. And her work is really inspiring to me. And she writes about how we are living in a critical moment, and that the pathway towards more sustainable and equitable futures is sort of realizing our mutual dependence on the world. And this means both humans and non-humans, realizing the ways that we're entangled, not just with our own interests, but with the interests of so many other people and things. So that's sort of my pitch for not knowing. And now I want to shift to talk about how not knowing, how this philosophy has sort of manifested in the research I've done at the Unstable Design Lab for the past, let's see now, about 4 years. So in one sense, I'd like to say that it's had an effect on both the research projects we do, but also the organization of the lab itself. And I like to think of the lab as a space where maybe I don't know necessarily how to lead or to be the advisor. And that instead of having a strong vision and moving the students all towards that vision, I try to bring in students that have a lot of different backgrounds and sensitivities and have us all kind of follow each other. In order to do this, I give permission for students to not know, to learn. They're not all expert programmers. A lot of them are learning. That's why they're in school. And so we try to create it as a space where you have that permission to learn, where you have a permission to care for yourself and care for the causes that you are passionate about, and where you have permission to play, that you don't have to have a narrow goal and grind on it 24 hours a day in order to do good research. That good research comes from having an open-minded, playful attitude and discovering what's there. And this results in research in kind of 3 interconnected directions. So we build tools, I try to do a lot of community building programs, and we also create provocations for other ways of working with technology. And all of this has been centered around the making of woven structures, so the making of textiles. And so weaving actually presented itself as a really interesting context for research when I started this position, because it was very much a very engaged experience of material agency. And weaving rarely ever turns out how you think you're going to make it. And you have to improvise on the fly to get anything kind of interesting out. And you really have to follow the materials, so to speak. Weaving is also an activity that requires a lot of idle time and repetitive labor among people. And that's actually created kind of an interesting space in the lab for people just to exist in time together and to talk idly and to learn that way. And a lot of what we're building in the lab are smart textiles. And so for those who may not understand necessarily what this term means, the idea behind smart textiles is you might have something like a hard PCB, like you see on the left. And what we're trying to do is reinvent as much of this functionality as we can within the kind of structures and materials that are germane to textiles. So soft materials and yarns and interlacements. But I will just say that I think textiles have always been smart, whether or not there's metal in them. And there's been 30,000 years of technical innovation in textiles that can inform what we do. So this picture up here is Athena and Arachne of Greek mythology having a weaving competition. And when you are weaving, even on this computer-controlled loom, there's still an extraordinary amount of manual participation and time spent in the process. And so just to give you a sense of some of these structures, what you see on the left is something akin to a trace, where you have a conductive yarn through the textile structure. And on the right, we've sort of used wool and a 2-pick bird's eye structure and a resistive yarn to make a force sensor. So the tools that we build are aiming to kind of bring together electric engineers and weavers to sort of imagine what's possible in smart textiles. And part of this is an issue of having a common language. So this is the language of weaving. It's called the draft, and it describes the textile structure. This is the language of circuitry, which describes less of the structure so much as the relationship and arrangement of different kinds of materials. And so one of the main projects of the lab has been centered around a design tool that blends the languages of electronics with textiles. And we based it in the woven draft and the idea that the weaving would be the sort of driving motivator, not necessarily the circuitry, and to open it up to a community of weavers that have long been seen as people who maybe aren't technical, right? They're your grandma or something like that. But actually, weavers and weaving is incredibly technical. And by privileging that perspective, we're trying to bring in more craft participation within the design of these systems. And what was interesting in our studies of this is that all the weavers we talked to would discover their structures through improvisation and play. And so instead of designing a tool that was about planning, we saw the opportunity for AdaCAD to be more of a tool for documenting what you did and sharing it. And so we do have AdaCAD available online. It's free software and it's open source. So the idea is that we could keep building it out. And hopefully it'll become a way of sharing knowledge across weavers and people working in electronics. The second aspect of this research is around community building. And so we started an artist residency in the summer of 2019 that invited an artist to participate in our research. We received over 200 applications from artists around the world. Many of them would be considered underrepresented in tech, and many of them were deeply technical. And some could program, some could work with technology. But that actually ended up not being the important quality. The important quality was that they deeply understood the weave structures. And it turns out that the understanding of electronics actually fit into that quite well, as it's just a metal thread that needs to move in these certain arrangements. So the idea with the residency, and this is a project we're going to be continuing with the support of a career grant for the next 4 or 5 years, is that we're going to keep bringing together different artists with different engineers with different challenges. And that through those collaborations, we're going to study how we can sort of embody what they learn or the new kinds of structures that come out in the design of tools that are open source. So the idea is that you have some kind of locus of research, but that what's discovered in that research can be embodied in tools and shared with the community more broadly. Moreover, we're looking for more ways and workshops that we could actually have the community be directly involved in the development of the tool and the way that it's used. So this is actually one of the first residencies that we had was with a Finnish weaver, Sandra Wirtanen, who made a concept for a dry electrode that instead of using wet adhesives, used wool and silver and elastics to reimagine an electrode for biometric sensing. And the last piece I'll talk about are the provocations. And so these are thinking about different ways that we can scaffold the process of not knowing among ourselves as designers, but also users. And so Michaela Frisky and Jordan Werfsbrock did this really wonderful project of tracking their own data and realizing it within the structures of yarn. And Jordan is a researcher in sonification, so she worked on sound. And there was this interesting way that yarn and sound actually participated in how the data would be read. And instead of trying to reduce those factors, they invited them in even more to show how ambiguity and multiple interpretations could be constructive. One of the members of our lab, Sasha DeConnick, is actually in an arts-based PhD program, and she's studying the histories of metal threads in 18th century embroidery, which are very much the same materials you're using for smart circuits today. And she studies this practice where people would unravel the metal threads in order to reuse them on different projects and garments, which inspired student Chanel Wu to sort of design smart textiles for their unravelability and to allow smart textile structures to be unraveled by their users, reused, or even modified outside the bounds of what a designer had imagined. The final project I'll talk about is one that's close to my heart, and it's called Design Memoirs. And it's really thinking about a way of research that's really about interrogating the felt and the personal. So these were a series of garments or projects that were meant to communicate how it felt to be a mother and how it felt to be a mother in specific response to how tracking tools were designed for mothers. So this is the nipple poncho, which I'll let you take what you want from this, but you know, the feeling of needing to be sucked on by more than just children. Christina, my colleague at TUE in Eindhoven, represented her situation with her daughter as a transfer of power, as seen in Money in the Shirt Collar. And Aisling Kelleher, who's at Virginia Tech, designed herself a series of medals for all the fertility treatment cycles she endured, which she called a form of competitive participation with her own body. So the idea in design memoirs is that rather than trying to look at these situations and pathologize them or call them problematic, sometimes there's a knowledge to be gained in just rendering them, to be able to understand them differently, to show how frustration and struggle and love and care are deeply entangled, and to be able to share them with each other. So if we look at this all together, I think our pathway towards participation, equity, and access through this logic of not knowing is really around noticing the world differently, seeing what's possible in the mundane and everyday, looking to the past even, reflecting on history and what it teaches us about the future, that we're not so technologically different than we were in the 1800s necessarily. It's about respecting the forces that are beyond our control. And instead of trying to solve them, which in some cases is desperately necessary, but in other cases we can benefit a lot from just rendering them, from seeing how the personal and the feelings and how it felt like to be somewhere really grows from a place of a wholeness of experience, that design can be more than just solving problems. It can be something that actually moves us. And so I like to end with this quote by Sarah Ahmed that talks about how a movement requires us to be moved. And so maybe not knowing isn't going to solve every problem. And I don't want to claim that it is, but I do hope that it'll help move us towards greater action. And with that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Laura. It was wonderful.
Thanks.
Webinar, like a whole, you're getting lots of wonderful chat, comments in the chat also.
Oh, good. I sort of did blinders, so, but thank you.
While lining, perhaps you can get your slideshow up and running. There are a few wonderful questions in the Q&A. I think we may only have for, yeah. Let's, I'll ask you a first one and then hopefully we might have time for another one. But so this is from Gayatri. I love your idea of productive struggle or frustration. I'm sure I've benefited from it myself, but I also wonder how we can support students through these episodes who may not share the same relationship with struggle, failure, or not knowing, as you mentioned here, and for whom failure may mean and cost much more.
Yeah, and thank you so much for asking that. I think the term failure means different things in different contexts and to different people. And so in some sense, I'm not trying to advocate for setting people up to fail necessarily, but for making it okay if failure does happen. And maybe more than embodying that in a practice or setting someone up to fail, it's more in how you maybe cultivate a space and how you sort of present yourself as an expert or a teacher, as somebody who's also learning. But I will say that there is something very different at failing to make a weaving with the wind than maybe failing to get into a program that could have really meaningful impacts on your life. But in both of those, learning how to recover from failure or learning how to see that as a moment where your sort of sense of self and learning is constructed rather than necessarily something you want to run away from can be, I think, useful. I hope that that helps answer it. But yeah, thank you.
Let's see, another wonderful question. I think just this last one, and then lining, we'll turn things over to you. But this is from Elena Duran Lopez. When listening to you, I can't avoid to see connections between your vision and indigenous worldviews, specifically ontological and epistemological perspectives around relationality. relationships between humans and materials, for example.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if indigenous thinkers and artists have played a role in your work.
Yeah, I mean, I think more and more. I approached a lot of these through Donna Haraway, who's certainly inspired by a lot of indigenous thinking. And, you know, I've been looking a lot more towards indigenous thinking. And part of what I struggle with is a way to encounter that knowledge without coming in as a kind of I don't know how to say this frankly, but like as a colonizer, right? Like, oh, I'd like to know what you're doing now. Please tell me. Um, so I've been looking to different books. Braiding Sweetgrass is one that I've been reading and have found really refreshing. But it's definitely something that I'm eager to learn more about and actively searching for. And yes, I think it does resonate in a lot of ways.
Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Laura. That's really wonderful. I would love to talk more about it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lining, we'll hand the stage over to you. We introduced you earlier, so I'll hand it over and look forward to your presentation. Thank you. Oh, and we can't hear you yet. You're muted.
Perfect. I guess you can hear me now.
Yep, that's great.
So what slides, I'm curious, are you seeing?
I'm seeing design, eat, play, learn.
And is right now full screen?
Yep, it looks beautiful.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Lining. Thanks, Leah, for introduction. And I also have my titles on the front page. So I would like to talk about the design, eat, play, and learn today. So I am a assistant professor. I started my research lab called Morphing Matter Lab 3 years ago at Carnegie Mellon University. So as you can see, I teach across different schools. So the talk today, one of the themes is really about how you bring in interdisciplinary knowledges in the teaching and researching process. And hopefully that's something as a lesson generalizable across not only college students, but you know, students of all ages. So this is me. So this was me 5 years ago when I was still a student. And I think there was a playful and also hands-on nature built into my research study. So I work with a lot of shape-changing materials. So a lot of hands-on fabrication and understanding the physics of the material system, and also trying to understand how to create meaningful, valuable, or creative experiences with those physical materials. So I actually think this event, the theme of the event, fits my interest very well. That's why I'm very delighted to be here and share some of my journeys. Like I said, after I graduated, I started the lab, and I tried to infuse some of my passions into the lab, which is also, again, making physical materials and understand the science principles behind it, and also try to leverage those for interesting design artifacts. So the lab is basically focusing on 3 aspects of development. The fundamental physical material development, and hardware and software tools, as well as design applications. And we work across different kinds of material system and also different kinds of application contexts. So we are very interested in wearables in general. So we work with fashion designers in that sense. But we also try to bring basically the smart materials to other contexts. So today, actually, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think your slides are not advancing for us. Are you? I assume you are advancing. Yeah. So we haven't seen the transition.
I apologize. I don't know why it's not advancing, but let me just share my screen. Maybe that's easier.
Okay.
Thanks, Leah, for
Yeah.
yes. So let me play and see. So am I advancing?
Yes, now we can see. Thank you.
So
Yep.
this should be a page with 4 of me, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah. So again, then I will speed up. This is where I'm saying this was me, trying to play with physical materials and trying to also understand the science and make hands dirty. So that's the true spirit really lies in my research. And this is what I said after I graduated. I started the lab, again, carrying that spirit of creativity, hands-on experiments. So, and now you guys are supposed to see a slide that has many small thumbnails. Please. Yep. Okay, good. Yeah, so this one really shows a spectrum of things that's going on in my lab. But in generally, we study materials and we build tools, and also we explore applications. I'm very interested in basically wearable context and also food context. But recently, you know, the students also brought in more sort of application-driven research into the lab as well. Some are to do with ocean, some are to do with very specialized, basically medical tools, for example, a shape-changing cast that accommodate different phase of your healing process during injury. So there is this underlining sort of design principles for most of the things we do, most of the materials we do. So there often is an energy stimuli source that trigger those shape change. And we often play with the composition of the materials. And also we often look for a dynamic physical properties as an output. It's very abstract, and I'd like to put it into this very interesting food context. So if you look at how people actually play with materials in the kitchen, there are a lot of different energy stimuli and also a lot of dynamic physical property changes. So you can, if you play with the law of elasticity, for example, you can make very elastic dough and make noodles that can be stretched really long and really thin. And then if you play with the expansion law, in this case, the input energy will be heat. And then you can make a fried balloon, basically, but it's also, again, a piece of cracker or bread, if you will. Again, like I said, there are always input energy and output function in those systems. Input energy, in this case, heat, and output is the shape change. And also, if you play with the law of buoyancy, you can make dumplings. And my grandma actually told me the dumplings will flow on top of the water as you cook them and as they are ready. It's an indicator the food is done cooking when you see the float on top. Again, there is an underlying physics, and then there is a behavior, which is floating behavior in this case, that is conversational almost with the chef. So all these very interesting phenomena in the kitchen made us wonder whether we can take food design and food research more seriously in a sense, you know, we can publish papers, we can generalize knowledge, and also we can, to some extent, get PhDs for myself and for my students to graduate. So we decided to basically project our material design philosophy into the context of kitchen. Again, with this method of thinking about stimuli, composition, and property. And I want to convince you guys with this 20 minutes each talk that kitchen is a very serious place. We can do science and we can learn science. Not only science, but also engineering. So think about kitchen. So there are a lot of energy stimuli. You know, when you bake food, cook food, when you bake, you fry, you boil food, there are constantly energy stimuli you are introducing to the food. And composition, again, chefs are all super great makers and designers. They do compositions all the time. Think about how you make croissant, right? How you make bread. So there are a lot of processes, layered laminations of edible materials. When you make dumplings, you have containing contents, and also you have the covers. These are compositions from a scientific sense. So then there are also interesting output properties chefs are often looking for. Flavors, for example, shape is a big thing. So when you bake a bread, your success really is determined by how much rising you can get, and surface texture, right? How crunchy your bread is. And also the color. So you often see color changes, and sometimes those color changes become very important indication during your cooking process, whether it's done, whether it's overdone, etc. Barbecue, for example. So, and we can pretty much understand these three technical aspects from a very scientific perspective in a kitchen. And we started to call those edible programmable materials, or another more geeky term, functional variation food. So the idea is really trying to, like I said, computationally design food in a way that we chop down those scientific concepts little by little. So yeah, so this is gonna be a journey about cooking. And we first wanted to look for some interesting physics that we can basically leverage for scientific cooking. And there are many, you see here, many terms, especially mechanical engineering terms, we can try to look for in a kitchen. So we started to actually borrow concepts from literature. So there are many playful food creations we've already using different physical properties. So for example, these one highlighted are all color changing food. And their purpose is just to make the cooking experience more fun. And then there are also, which I called shape changing and texture transforming food. So you can inflate your bread, you can fry a piece of cracker and see it drastically expand within a really short time. And there are also shape changing, in this case, more like a self-folding origami-ish. So you can cook a flat gel that can form into 3D. So we look at what exists in the literature and figured, although hydrophobicity and swelling rate were common topics in kitchen, but it was not really investigated that intensively. So we decided to focus on this concept of swelling rate. And it's actually really universal. So when you cook a piece of pasta, it will swell and grow thicker, right? And also when you cook a dumpling, it will also become softer and slightly bigger. So this is swelling we are talking about. Basically, it attracts water molecules and becomes softer and larger. Sounds so universal in the kitchen, but actually it's also very universal in nature. So when I was a kid, I grew up in Inner Mongolia. We used to run to the forest to pick up mushrooms and pine cones on the way. So pine cones is this very interesting seed that has a very interesting swelling behavior. It's not food, but again, so the later design of food was inspired by this similar phenomenon. So for pine cone, if you actually, when it's dry, it's fully closed. But when you put it in water, all the scales will open up. And interestingly, sorry, when you let it dry, the scale will open up. So when you put it in water, the scale will close. And the interesting part is this is a sort of a reversible process. So after I played on balcony, you know, when I was a kid, it opened, it was magical. So then I placed it back in water. Back then, I clearly remember it was closed, and I wonder why. Nowadays, you know, after working with shape-changing materials for so long, I finally understand this is actually a swelling-induced reversible shape-changing mechanism. That's very universal in nature. Most of the seeds leverage this mechanism to disperse seeds once they're matured. And there are also very interesting kind of a composition. You guys heard the term composition from, from my earlier slides in terms of the trick to design shape-changing materials. So there is a very interesting and specific composition within each scale of the pine cone to cause this very specific opening and closing motion. And that's how our mother nature is composing its own morphing structures. And not only nature has shapes that can open and close like a bending, but they also have twist, they have helical motion, they also have sequential motion that can open and close flower layer by layer. And all these transformations I'm showing here are triggered by the same simple principle, which is called swelling. So basically water comes in, things become bigger. You lose water, things dries out and become smaller. So simple. And that is what we are trying to play with in the kitchen. So think about, I mentioned the pasta. So when you cook a piece of pasta, it will swell. But what if you do something really fun? So here, you basically tune the composition of the pasta to make some regions swell less than the other region. So here you can see we basically make the darker blue region swells more than the lighter blue region. Then before cooking is a flat piece. After cooking, because of the differential swelling, they actually turns into a 3D shape. So that is the magic we are trying to play. Basically play with the composition so we get a transformation effect as you are cooking your food. Yeah, I'll play a video. I think it will be a little bit more clear. Just to make sure, Leah, you are seeing a video playing, right? The video is progressing?
Yep, it totally is. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, here we show basically a pasta was designed in a software and made flat and fabricated flat, but when you cook them, they self-fold into 3D. So this process, this animation you are seeing right now is actually the transformation process during the cooking. So they were in water right now. So we were able to make a lot of food that were flat initially, but again, once you put it in water, it self-folds into different shapes. As you can see, some of the shapes are pretty much like conventional pasta shape, but some others are more creative and perhaps very tricky to do with the conventional pasta manufacturing technology. So like I mentioned, science is very simple. It's pretty much the starch is absorbing water and grow. Starch is one of the major components inside the flour dough. This is water comes in, the granules of starch grow bigger. So we made something very interesting is, like I said, we basically create a piece of pasta that has this differential density changes. And these density changes will cause differential swelling behavior. So that's where you can achieve what we wanted to. So a flat piece, when you put it in water, the top layer swell less, the bottom layer swell more. That's why they can bend. And we can also, look into other different swellable materials, edible and swellable. So it turns out different edible materials have a different swelling ratio. And then here we basically have the center part made swell much more slowly and less than the edges. This is under microscope. You can see as the water comes in, the center part rises up more slowly. And in that case, so what I just said is we are using the density distribution and also the compositional structure to create dynamic properties for food. And you can make things a little bit more interesting. Instead of just laminating 2 layers, you can start to draw some those darker brown lines that has less swelling rate than the lighter yellow. So in this case, we can make food dense more dynamically. So here, when top part is the actual food, the bottom is the simulation, but it basically shows the food can dance one way, and then if you cook it for a bit longer, then they turn to another way, to turn to another direction and keep folding. So this a slightly more complicated composition is leading to a more interesting shape-changing behaviors for food. And then you can goes beyond just making a cylinder. This looks like a potato chip, right? But you can pretty much make similar things with food. So you can make a flat disc that transform into this saddle shape when you cook them in water. So again, so there are a lot of scientific keywords I'm talking about as the kind of the physics concepts we can derive. And also we can actually quantitatively measure the behaviors of the food. So here we shows how you can understand the crunchiness, the texture. This is the mouthfeel. Just imagine you're knocking on the food, how much of a basically resistance the food can create. We did a lot of mechanical tests just to understand, how our food may taste theoretically. And this is a stretch test. And eventually we concluded different shapes we are able to achieve actually are associated with different mouthfeel, different springiness and firmness when you are when you are enjoying and eating them. And then we also end up, we also end up working with the chef just because we were not experts in flavors. So actually together we made some indeed a really edible food and enjoyable food. So this is a plankton-based saddle. This is a mushroom-based flour. And actually, Chef Matthew, he's a chef in a French cuisine restaurant who basically leveraged some of the restaurant's recipes with our shape-changing materials as part of his ingredients. So these are the final dishes he made during a collaborative making session. So you can see our shape-changing food becomes part of his dish. And this is my favorite. It's flat, little piece dipped into a pot, and it will bend up, wrap the caviar around it, and form a little cannoli. So this was inspired by my earlier motivation of make self-folding dumplings, because my mom always spent a lot of time to hand fold a lot of dumplings. I thought it would be great if the food can make make wraps by itself in a sense. And this is also an interesting one. I talk about the programmable noodle. So the idea is if you cook it for a shorter time, it's long. But if you cook it for longer, it started to self-chop into smaller pieces and also wrap up into a cylinder. Imagine now you can cook for both yourself who like longer food and maybe your kids who like shorter ones for easier digestion within one pot.
Sorry, Linning, to interrupt. We're coming to the end of the amount of time, and I just wanted to let you know there are like about 2 minutes left. So.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Leah. So I'm going to skip some of the slides then and quickly go through to the end. So again, so there is also this practical aspects. We wanted to make food that's flatly packable. So if you make 3D food, actually 67% of the packaging space is used for packing air. And when we brought it to also the Italian audience who are experts in making pasta, and right now, what I'm showing you guys very quickly is some newest development. So basically, we're actually trying to work with an Italian pasta company to try to make real semolina-based flour, semolina flour-based pasta to be able to transform. And these, again, on the plates are the food, the pasta, indeed authentic pasta after transformation. And on the top left corner are those pastas before transform. We are also bring this to, we also bring this to a mountain hike. So my students actually cooked flat packed pasta within 10 minutes and being able to eat it. So again, back to the events. So I think eat and digest science could be a very interesting topic in terms of how we teach interdisciplinary knowledges to our children. So there's edible science in the center. As you can see, it really incorporates all these interesting disciplines and also design concepts. So we had some experience running classes, teaching students how to learn science and while playing with edible materials. So this was a class we ran recently. And also based on all the experiences, we recently initiated a NSF project, basically trying to bring those shape-changing food into classroom to better foster the attitude and aspirations of girls to learn science and engineering. And this was a collaboration with Alicia. So yeah, the ending message from my side is really, I think, I went through all those details. The purpose was just to show you guys, we really believe there's this very rich kind of computational design, physics, fabrication, digital making aspects in kitchen. And this is also a very intriguing and also to some extent engaging context we can bring to a classroom and hopefully involve younger minds to create and eat together.
This is so wonderful, Lenny. Thank you so much. This was fascinating and really inspiring. There, as you can see, a bunch of messages in the chat and also some questions in the Q&A. Unfortunately, I don't think we have time to answer the questions right now. We have to move on to the next session, but thank you so much. That was really, really great. It was really inspiring.
Yeah, sorry for the earlier complication, but
oh, no, that was fine.
Hopefully to have a chance to work with educators here.
Yeah, I'm sure that they would love that. We would love that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both for joining us.
Yeah, it was incredible. Thank you. Hey.
Bye.